not have been more forthcoming to the public was a mistake.
They had the letter for months, and they said nothing. Now Ed Smart is calling it exactly what it is, a catastrophic mistake. And he would know because he lived through the exact same nightmare when his own daughter Elizabeth was taken. What he told me about the Nancy Guthrie case, you need to hear, because it confirms everything you and I already suspected 170 days since Nancy Guthrie vanished in Tucson.
Kind of crazy that it's now been more than 170 days since Nancy went missing in Tucson, Arizona. And as I've covered the case, obviously I think a lot about Nancy's family, what they're going through, what it's like behind the scenes, what their relationship must be like with law enforcement, the frustration that may exist. And there's really only a handful of people who may understand what that is like, and who have been through something like that with a case that's gotten this much media attention. And one of those people, I believe, is Ed Smart.
Her daughter Savannah, the Today Show anchor, had to sit in front of the world and pretend everything was fine while behind the scenes she was being fed silence. And here's the thing that should make your blood boil. Police had a letter. A second letter claiming Nancy was dead, returned to nature, whatever that means.
They've said, she's returned to nature, and I'm sitting there, well, whatever that might mean, which there's a huge range, but at least people could be possibly looking for something or being aware. I mean, until you express the possibility, and I know that there was always the expression that's possible that she would be dead, but I think that on the other hand, without the closer you can dial everything in, not that you should just have tunnel vision, but that you have an idea of what to be looking for, the greater it is that the public will, may possibly have seen something and could come forward.
That letter came in the second week of the disappearance. The second week. They sat on it for over 5 months while search parties combed the desert, while armchair detectives chased basements and traffickers, while a family hemorrhaged hope.
In Nancy's situation, where these letters came forward and the family was made aware, I just feel like it was a mistake not to be straight out. I, heard so many conspiracy theorists and people saying, "Oh, well, they're probably just doing this for attention." And I'm sitting there, for anyone who hasn't gone through this experience, no, there's no way you would ever choose to go through this. You're you just have the wrong idea and don't know the pain that one goes through when you've lost a family member.
You already know what I'm about to say. That wasn't an oversight, not an oversight at all. Ed Smart sat down with me and didn't hold back. And look, I have to be honest, talking to him felt like sitting across from a man who's been forged in a fire most of us can't imagine. Elizabeth Smart was 14 when she was taken from her bedroom in Salt Lake City in 2002. 9 months of hell before she was rescued. You remember the media circus. You also remember how the police handled it.
Certainly during the time that Elizabeth was gone, we were on this emotional roller coaster, which I'm sure she has been. I have just been amazed at how well she has handled everything. Also felt badly that law enforcement weren't more forthcoming. You can never control the narrative that happens with law enforcement, the FBI, the police, the sheriff's department, whoever your law enforcement is. And, you would think that they were basically doing everything in the best interest and they have their protocols or their procedures to follow.
And that's where Ed's perspective cuts like a blade through the official narrative they're trying to sell us on the Guthrie case. He told me law enforcement in Tucson made the same fatal error they made back then. They kept the truth locked up because they were afraid of losing control. Ed said it plain. To not have been more forthcoming to the public was a mistake. He didn't whisper it. He said it out loud, knowing full well the backlash that comes from criticizing the badge. That's a silenced hero right there. A father who got his daughter back and now uses his voice to protect other families from the same institutional stonewalling. And just like I know that when the system gets scared, it circles the wagons and starts treating a missing persons case like a damage control operation. Here's where it gets interesting. Ed revealed that during Elizabeth's ordeal, his own family was treated like suspects.
Absolutely. They not only I mean I felt like I was finally cleared, but my older brother, who basically put his heart and soul into helping us find Elizabeth, he the picture, the finger kept getting pointed to him. And I think that that's a natural thing. Law enforcement have to basically get in there, and they should be able to clear the family. And the sooner that's cleared, the fewer conspiracy theories come about, and the better the focus can be made on finding the family member. I mean, in our situation where Elizabeth was gone for so long and law enforcement did not clear the whole family, that clearing could have happened so quickly. I mean, the my brothers or sisters were with their spouses at home in bed that night.
Hmm.
There wasn't any chance that they had snuck out and taken her at 2 in the morning. So, that could have been cleared, and that should have been over with. But it did not. It just drug on and drug on. And finally, I think it kind of dissipated into the background, but it was still problematic because, when you look at our case, there were certainly points at which, searchers dropped off because they thought, oh, well, maybe it's the Smart family. They're just,
Were
there
you
was
ever nervous? Like, I don't, did you ever get a feeling, oh my gosh, like I think the police are thinking it's me or my brother, and like this, you know what I mean? Like, how are we going to prove them? I don't know. That just seems like it'd be a very uncomfortable feeling, like,
His older brother, a man who poured his soul into the search, had the finger pointed at him for months. They never cleared him publicly. And guess what that did? It bled volunteers, it fed conspiracy vultures, and it gave the real predator more time. Ed's wife, Lois, was pulled aside and told, "We don't think your husband is telling the truth. Imagine that. Your child is gone, and the people who are supposed to save her are trying to fracture your marriage."
at one point, law enforcement told Lois that they didn't think I was telling the truth. And, that certainly caused problems between us. And I felt like it was so important to basically clear ourselves, do whatever it took, whether it was a polygraph, whether it was going down to the police station and saying, what is it that you're thinking I'm hiding? I mean, I remember one day as I was trying to catch up with Lois, and she was she was taking the kids down to get a couple of dogs for us. And I said I wanted to come down and help. So I got down there, and she had this big hat on and these glasses, and I saw these tears coming down her face, and that just, broke me up inside. And I said, Lois, what is it? And she said, law enforcement think that you're not telling the truth. And so I finally said, I am going down there right now. I'm answering whatever questions they have, and I won't be coming home until you receive a phone call from the police and they're telling you that they don't believe that I've been involved, because I haven't. I have nothing to do with this.
Ed did what any innocent father would do. He marched down to the station and said, "I'm not leaving until you call my wife and tell her I'm clean." That's raw. That's a man with nothing to hide. Now, connect that to Nancy Guthrie. Savannah and her family have been excruciatingly careful not to publicly clash with the sheriff. It's a balancing act, Ed called.
It is definitely a balancing act. I mean, even the morning of the day that Elizabeth was found, My brother had set off the record that the, Salt Lake Police Department were trying to cover their rear end. And and I just thought, as much as that might be true, it's not going to do us any good to go out and say that. It's just going to, make them feel like we don't care or we don't want their help.
You want them working for you, not against you. But deep down, we all know what happens when you stay quiet. The vacuum fills with poison. The internet points fingers at the sister, the brother, in law, anyone with a pulse. And the real evidence, the real leads, they fade. It told me he tried to reach Savannah early on, to tell her to get a private eye, someone outside the system. Because he's learned you can't trust the police to share everything that matters. He said, the information is held too closely to the vest.
To contact Savannah and ask her to, potentially have a private eye look at the whole situation and, try to come up with a better idea or further or what has not been looked at properly.
So
We all have.
you think she should get a private eye?
Well, I don't know at this point, but I would have started at
Mm.
least a month in to, try to push that forward. I don't know all that Savannah has been told and her family has been told. So it's hard for me to, I mean, I'm giving my idea, my thought, and what I learned from our case and what I've seen in so many other cases is that the information is held too closely to the vest, so to speak, and that it needs to be put out there so that the public are giving the best direction they can to their efforts if they're out looking or if they've seen something. The closer it comes to the time, for example, if that second letter came, I think it was the second week of the abduction, and if that had come out, somebody potentially might have seen her being buried if
Mm.
that was the case. And over time, your memory, creates stories and all sorts of things. So the information that the sooner that it can come out, the better off we are in as the public trying to help bring these cases to a close.
And that, right there, is the quiet tragedy of this case. While the family played nice, a letter that could have focused the search on recovery, on finding a body, on spotting a shallow grave before the desert raised in a case file was hit. I need you to stay with me here. Picture this. Somewhere out in the vast Tucson desert, the heat and the animals and the passage of time are destroying the one thing that could give Savannah peace, her mother's remains. And if that letter had been released when they got it, someone might have seen something, a flash of disturbed earth, a vehicle that didn't belong, a detail that now is lost forever because human memory doesn't wait for bureaucratic approval. Said it himself, the sooner information goes public, the better chance the public can help.
The help that is available, I think keeping the public engaged is hugely important. And I think that was, I think that there might have been answers sooner if they had been more public with the fact that they believed that she was deceased instead of allowing it to go on for this long.
That's not a radical idea. That's common sense. But the institutions we're supposed to trust treat common sense like a threat.
Whether they're psychics or whatever, will come forward with ideas, and people have different ideas. But for the most part, I believe that people want to help. In Elizabeth's case, I felt overwhelmed. It gave me the greatest hope to see people wanting to help and being out there searching. We had so many people that donated and tried to help in the cause.
Now I need to slow down for a moment, just for a second, because this part gets personal for me. I've covered so many cases where a family is left in this suspended state of agony, and every single time I watch law enforcement, they give you fragments. They manage you. They talk about protocols while a wound bleeds and bleeds and bleeds, as Ed described it.
But the ups and downs are this emotional roller coaster that, it's just like it's out of control. You get to a point where you just kind of protect your emotions because it is so up and down and all over the place that it's exhausting. It's an emotional wreck, and so the not knowing is the worst part. I headed up a group called the Surviving Parents Coalition. And in that group, we had parents who, a few of us were fortunate to have our child come home. Many of them did not know. They're still in this state of not knowing, which is where Savannah and her family currently are. And then there are those that absolutely know that their child or their parent is deceased. And so it's a there's such a wide range of emotion that goes with that, but it's hard to watch the struggle. I think that whether your child's returned to you or whether you know that they're dead, that's a certainty. And the not knowing, which even in the fact, well, there's no fact about it, but in the situation where they believe that she may be deceased, the not knowing and the total confirmation that that is the case is something that I feel is really important to any family. And I believe that's where um, Savannah and her family are at the moment. So, I totally feel that it's kind of like a wound. You, depending on how big that wound is, and losing a child or a parent is huge. I mean, they're such a big, important part of your life. And when they're missing, it's like you've been wounded, and this wound just stays there and kind of bleeds and bleeds and bleeds. And how do you close that wound up?
The not knowing. It's a torture no family should endure. And I think about Savannah, a woman of faith, a mother herself, having to walk onto a morning show set and smile while carrying the weight of an unclosed grave.
You know, I kept feeling that she was out there. There were certainly times when I just thought, God, please let this just be over with. Whether she's dead or alive, please just bring it to an end.
That image haunts me. It makes me angry. And I think it should make you angry too, because the system that's supposed to serve families is serving itself first. And this is the part nobody talks about. The pattern is too clean. In the Elizabeth Smart case, Id's family eventually went public with a sketch of the suspect against police wishes because they knew time was running out. That sketch, that act of defiance, helped bring Elizabeth home. In the Guthrie case, the family trusted the process. They waited. And now we're here half a year later with no body, no closure, and a letter that only came to light because the pressure became unbearable. What does that tell you? It tells you that transparency isn't the default. It's a battle. And the people holding the evidence will release it when they're cornered. I want to share a moment from Ed's interview that broke me a little. He talked about being part of a surviving parents coalition meeting families who never got their child back. They live in a permanent state of not knowing. He said some of them feel whether their loved one is alive or dead, but not knowing, that's a wound that never closes. And then he said something I'll never forget. He called it the new normal. You are never the same. You can never return to where you were. Savannah and her family are living in that new normal right now, and the people with the power to ease their suffering chose silence. They chose to protect their investigation over a daughter's right to bury her mother. So let's name what this really is. A system that values its own image more than justice. A system that blackballs the truth until it's too late. You can feel it. The outrage building in your chest, because we've seen this movie before. The FBI, the local sheriff, they all nod and promise transparency, and then a letter sits in a drawer for 5 months while a family prays for a miracle that already died. Ed Smart's voice is ringing out now, saying what Savannah probably can't say publicly without risking the very help she needs. He is the unlikely hero in this story, a man who lost nearly a year to a kidnapper and then lost years more to a justice system that treated his family like suspects. And now he's standing up and telling Tucson investigators they've made a huge mistake. They should have released that letter the moment it was authenticated. They should have trusted the public. Instead, they gave us 5 months of false hope and wild theories while the evidence they had pointed toward a heartbreaking truth. What else are they hiding? That's the question I can't shake. If that letter was buried, what other evidence is being sanitized? What leads are being dismissed because they don't fit a neat narrative? We're not just talking about incompetence anymore. We're talking about a deliberate choice to keep the family and the public in the dark. And for what? To avoid embarrassment? To control the storyline? Ed was right. You cannot control the narrative when you serve the truth. The truth controls you. So here's my question to you, and I want you to answer honestly in the comments. Do you believe the Tucson investigators were protecting the case or protecting themselves? And if you can't trust them with a letter, how can you trust them with anything? Because Nancy Guthrie is still out there waiting to be found, waiting for someone to bring her home, and the clock is still ticking. But for Savannah, that clock stopped the moment she realized the people she trusted were hiding the one thing that could have ended her nightmare. We see it. Ed sees it. Now the question is, will the system ever admit it? Probably not. They rarely do, and that's the tragedy we have to live with.